On a radiant July morning in 1905, the sprawling Sandringham estate in Norfolk buzzed with the hum of summer life. Bees danced among clover fields, and the air carried the faint scent of pine from the surrounding woods. Within York Cottage, a modest residence on the estate, a new voice broke through the quiet. The cries of Prince John Charles Francis, the sixth and final child of the future, King George V and Queen Mary. Born on July 12, 1905, John arrived into a world of imperial grandeur and rigid protocol, yet his life would unfold as a poignant counterpoint to the polished image of the British monarchy. His brief existence, marked by epilepsy, developmental challenges, and an irrepressible spirit, would challenge the conventions of his time and leave a legacy that resonates in modern discussions of disability, inclusion, and the human side of royalty. John's birth occurred during the reign of his grandfather, King Edward VII, when the British Empire spanned a quarter of the globe, and the monarchy was a symbol of unassailable power. His parents, then the Prince and Princess of Wales, were poised to ascend the throne, with George V just one heartbeat away from kingship. York Cottage, a cramped and unpretentious home by royal standards, was filled with the energy of a growing family. John joined 5 siblings: Edward, the future Edward VIII, Albert, the future George VI, Mary, Henry, and George. The royal nursery was a lively chaos of sailor suits, wooden toys, and the constant chatter of children, raised in privilege but bound by duty. From the outset, John's arrival was tinged with superstition. His name, John, carried an unlucky reputation in royal circles, linked to ill-fated predecessors like King John of Magna Carta fame and Prince John of Gaunt. Nurses whispered about the choice, but George and Mary, pragmatic and unsentimental, dismissed such concerns. To the public, John was a cherubic addition to the royal family, his image captured in sepia-toned postcards that circulated through London's kiosks and seaside shops. These early photographs, showing a plump, smiling infant, fueled public affection, with newspapers heralding the mischievous prince who seemed allergic to the formality of court life. Yet behind the lens, John's life was already diverging from the scripted narrative of royal perfection. The Edwardian era was a time of transition, with motor cars replacing horse-drawn carriages and the first flickers of modernity challenging Victorian traditions. The monarchy, under Edward VII's flamboyant rule, balanced tradition with spectacle, and the Wales children were a key part of this public relations machine. John, with his wide eyes and impish grin, became a favorite of photographers. His antics, wriggling during portrait sessions or tugging at his siblings' sashes, adding a relatable charm to the royal brand. Yet even in these early years, subtle signs suggested that John's path would be different. He was slower to speak than his siblings, and his boundless energy sometimes veered into unpredictability, hints of the challenges that would soon define his life. In 1909, at the age of 4, John's world shifted irrevocably. During a routine morning in the York Cottage nursery, he stiffened suddenly, his body seized by an unseen force. His eyes widened, and his small frame convulsed in what was later identified as an epileptic seizure. The royal household, accustomed to managing public appearances and diplomatic crises, was unprepared for this private emergency. Charlotte Lala Bill, John's devoted nurse, cradled him through the episode, her calm voice a lifeline as the seizure subsided. Doctors were summoned, their diagnoses delivered in hushed tones. Epilepsy, a condition poorly understood in the early 20th century, coupled with possible developmental delays and behaviors that some modern scholars suggest may align with autism spectrum disorder. Epilepsy in 1909 was a medical and social stigma. Treatments were limited to sedatives like bromide, which dulled symptoms but carried harsh side effects, and institutionalization was a common fate for those whose seizures could not be controlled. For a royal family, the diagnosis posed a unique challenge. The monarchy was expected to embody strength and stability, and a prince with a visible disability risked fueling public speculation or undermining the crown's image. Yet George and Mary, contrary to later myths of neglect, responded with a blend of pragmatism and affection. They sought the best medical advice available, consulting specialists who could offer little beyond cautious monitoring and lifestyle adjustments. John's nursery became a sanctuary, with Lullabill as its guardian, ensuring that his days were filled with play and comfort, despite the looming threat of seizures. John's condition did not erase his personality. Family accounts describe a boy who delighted in simple pleasures, racing tin soldiers across the floor, stacking wooden blocks into precarious towers, and giggling at his own nonsensical rhymes. His siblings, though occasionally baffled by his unpredictable moods, included him in their games, with Mary, the only sister, taking a particular interest in his care. George V, often portrayed as a gruff naval disciplinarian, showed a softer side with John, sparing him the strict expectations imposed on his older brothers. Queen Mary, known for her reserved demeanor, was equally devoted, spending hours reading to John or encouraging his fragmented stories. These moments, preserved in family letters and diaries, reveal a household striving to balance royal duty with parental love. In the early 1910s, John remained a visible part of the royal family's public life. The death of Edward VII in 1910 and the ascension of George V thrust the family into the spotlight, with the coronation of 1911 a defining moment. John, at 6, was deemed too fragile to attend the ceremony at Westminster Abbey, where the crowds and sensory overload might trigger a seizure. Instead, he waved from a carriage during less formal events, his awkward salutes and infectious smile earning him a place in the public's heart. Newspapers dubbed him the mischievous prince, and his image adorned biscuit tins and souvenir cards, a testament to his role as the empire's unofficial mascot of innocence. Behind the scenes, John's challenges were becoming more pronounced. His seizures grew more frequent, sometimes clustering in rapid succession, and his developmental delays made traditional education difficult. Tutors accustomed to drilling Latin and arithmetic into royal children found John's attention erratic. He might spend an hour spinning in circles or fixating on a mechanical toy, only to surprise everyone with a perfectly recited nursery rhyme or a witty remark about his father's ugly beard. These bursts of clarity, juxtaposed with his struggles, frustrated educators but endeared him to his family. George V, in a rare moment of candor, reportedly told a courtier that John has a way of making you laugh when you least expect it, a quality that disarmed even the most protocol-obsessed visitors. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 cast a shadow over Britain, and the royal family's public role intensified. George V and Mary threw themselves into war efforts, visiting hospitals and rallying public morale, while their older children took on symbolic duties. John's appearances dwindled as his seizures became harder to manage, and the palace, wary of public scrutiny, began to shield him from view. This shift fueled later myths of a hidden prince, but contemporary records paint a different picture. John was not locked away. He was carefully managed, his health prioritized over public exposure. Family diaries note visits from siblings who brought stories of military drills or London gossip, and letters from Queen Mary to her mother-in-law, Queen Alexandra, describe John's delight in new toys or garden adventures. By 1916, as the war ground on and John's condition worsened, the royal family made a significant decision. At age 11, John was moved to Wood Farm, a modest brick house on the Sandringham estate, far from the bustle of London and the formalities of court life. The move was not an exile, as some later sensationalists claimed, but a deliberate effort to create a calmer environment where John could thrive. Wood Farm, with its orchards and open fields, offered a stark contrast to the gilded cages of Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. Here, John could wander without scrutiny, his seizures met with compassion rather than gasps. Lala Bill, now a maternal figure as much as a nurse, oversaw John's care with unwavering dedication. She read him fairy tales, organized scavenger hunts among the apple trees, and sang lullabies to soothe him after seizures. Recognizing John's need for companionship, Queen Mary broke centuries of protocol by inviting local children to play with him. Among them was Winifred Thomas, a spirited girl from a nearby village who became John's closest friend. Winifred, whose own health was fragile due to asthma, understood John's limitations instinctively, and their friendship, built on shared laughter and half-finished sentences, brought a sense of normalcy to his life. These playmates, handpicked for their kindness, introduced John to games like Conkers and hide-and-seek, moments of joy that transcended class and rank. Queen Alexandra, John's grandmother, played a pivotal role in shaping his world at Wood Farm. A Danish princess with a deep love of nature, she transformed the estate's gardens into a private Eden for her grandson. Raised strawberry beds, a goldfish pond, and hidden nooks became John's playground, where he could kneel in the soil, plant seeds, or chase butterflies. These simple acts, tugging weeds, watching tadpoles, offered a rhythm that soothed his restless mind, teaching him patience in a way no tutor could. Alexandra's garden was more than a refuge. It was a testament to the family's commitment to John's happiness, a counterpoint to the war's devastation unfolding beyond Sandringham's borders. World War I, raging from 1914 to 1918, drained Britain of resources and optimism. The royal family, acutely aware of their German heritage, faced pressure to prove their loyalty. George V renamed the royal house Windsor in 1917, shedding the German-sounding Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and the family's public appearances became exercises in patriotic unity. John's absence from these events was noted but not yet sensationalized. Palace strategists, mindful of the war's toll on public morale, avoided highlighting a prince whose health might be misconstrued as weakness. This discretion, while protective, laid the groundwork for later myths of abandonment. Within the family, John remained a cherished presence. His siblings, now teenagers and young adults, made regular visits to Wood Farm, their bicycles kicking up dust along the estate's lanes. Edward, the future Edward VIII, taught John exaggerated military salutes, while Albert, the future George VI, shared quiet moments sketching with his brother. Mary, the only sister, brought books and patience, reading aloud when John's attention wavered. These visits, though joyful, were increasingly overshadowed by the severity of John's seizures. Nurses noted the siblings' growing unease, their laughter giving way to concern as John's episodes became more frequent and prolonged. Lala Bill, ever protective, shielded them from the worst, ensuring that farewells remained warm but brief. The war's end in November 1918 brought relief to Britain, but for John the battle within continued. His seizures, now sometimes daily, left him exhausted, and his developmental challenges limited his ability to engage with the world. Yet his spirit remained vibrant. He memorized nursery rhymes with theatrical flair, tinkered with mechanical toys, and delighted in the absurd, once declaring a visiting vicar's hat silly to the amusement of the household. These moments, preserved in Lala's notes and family letters, reveal a boy who found joy in defiance of his circumstances, a prince whose laughter was a rebellion against fate. On January 18, 1919, Wood Farm was cloaked in the quiet of a winter evening. John, now 13 and a half, retired to bed after a day of gentle play. His breathing, often uneven after seizures, grew labored. At 5:30 p.m., a particularly violent seizure gripped him, and his heart, weakened by years of strain, gave out. Leela Bill, at his side, held his hand, memorizing the moment with a nurse's precision and a mother's heartbreak. The news reached Sandringham House in Buckingham Palace by telephone, and the royal family was plunged into grief. Queen Mary, in her journal, described a mix of shock and relief, noting that John's death was a merciful release for a spirit that had struggled against its frail body. George V, less articulate but no less affected, echoed her sentiments, his grief tempered by the era's stoic expectations. The family's reactions varied. Edward, then 24, and already showing the impulsiveness that would define his later life, reportedly called John's death a dreadful nuisance, a remark that stung his mother and fueled later speculation about his emotional detachment. He quickly apologized, but the comment lingered, a glimpse of the man who would abdicate for love in 1936. The younger siblings, particularly Mary and Albert, mourned more openly, their visits to Wood Farm having forged deep bonds with John. The funeral, held on January 21st at St. Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate, was deliberately understated. No grand processions or military bands accompanied the small casket. Instead, estate workers, local parishioners, and a handful of royals gathered under a gray sky, their hymns mingling with the wind. Soldiers on leave, standing quietly at the back, offered silent salutes, recognizing in John a fellow soul lost too soon. The palace's official statement, released after the funeral, was candid. John had died of epilepsy, a condition that carried no shame or moral failing. This transparency was groundbreaking for 1919, when epilepsy was often hidden behind euphemisms or institutional walls. For British families with the difficult relatives, the announcement was both a mirror and a challenge, reflecting their own struggles while highlighting the royal family's willingness to acknowledge John's condition. George V and Mary, far from the neglectful parents of later myths, were progressive for their time, choosing home care over asylums and prioritizing John's comfort over public optics. John's death faded from public view as the 20th century unfolded. The abdication crisis of 1936, the Second World War, and the reign of Elizabeth II overshadowed his story, relegating him to genealogical footnotes. Yet whispers of a hidden prince persisted, fueled by sensationalist tabloids and a public eager for royal secrets. These myths, portraying John as a shameful outcast, were far from the truth, but proved stubbornly persistent, shaping perceptions for decades. The late 20th century brought a revival of interest. In 1998, the discovery of 2 photo albums in the Royal Archives, filled with images of John at play, sparked renewed curiosity. The BBC broadcast these images, offering a glimpse of a boy who was neither locked away nor forgotten. In 2003, Stephen Polyakov's film The Lost Prince reimagined John's life, blending archival accuracy with poetic license to portray him as a symbol of innocence in a world of war and protocol. The film, lauded for its sensitivity, cemented John's place in popular culture, transforming him into a touchstone for discussions about disability and neurodiversity. Modern scholars and advocates have embraced John's story as a lens for examining historical attitudes toward epilepsy and developmental differences. The Epilepsy Society, among others, has praised George V and Mary for their forward-thinking approach, noting that John's home-based care and access to companionship were rare for the era. Classroom discussions, medical journals, and online platforms like YouTube now explore his life, drawing parallels to contemporary efforts to promote inclusion and challenge stigma. John's story resonates because it humanizes the monarchy, revealing a family grappling with universal challenges, illness, loss, and the search for meaning behind the crown's polished facade. John's life, though brief, carries enduring lessons. His epilepsy and developmental challenges mirror the experiences of millions today, amplified by social media campaigns that advocate for awareness and acceptance. His move to Wood Farm, once misinterpreted as abandonment, parallels modern efforts to create supportive environments for those with disabilities, prioritizing quality of life over societal expectations. His friendship with Winifred Thomas and other local children underscores the power of connection, a reminder that inclusion transcends status or circumstance. What sets John apart is his defiance of the narrative imposed on him. He was not a tragic figure or a royal secret, but a boy who found joy in toy trains, garden patches, and the absurdities of adult pomp. His laughter, captured in fleeting moments, cracked the monarchy's veneer, exposing the shared humanity beneath. In an era when disability was often equated with shame, John's family chose love over concealment, a decision that resonates in today's push for visibility and equity. For those who encounter his story, whether through a documentary, a history lesson, or a family photograph, John is a reminder that history is not just about crowns and conquests, but about individuals who shape it through their presence. His 13 and a half years were a whirlwind of joy, struggle, and resilience, a testament to the power of a child's spirit to challenge conventions and inspire change. So the next time you see a royal portrait or hear a tale of palace intrigue, think of Prince John, the boy who refused to sit still for the camera, who found paradise in a strawberry bed, and whose echo continues to teach us that every heartbeat, royal or not, deserves to be heard.